This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might sacrifice themselves, we make sure to die for the sake of our romantic rival to get the girl in the end. Every episode, we discuss a film through the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I write about films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks, and I'm a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods, the David Thulis of podcasting. I'm joined by my brother and common man co-host, a man who has certainly mastered the art of shooting a long-barreled musket. Jake Miller, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is the movie that really it hit a lot of what we loved growing up about movies, like the romanticized version of Indian life and shooting awesome guns that look cool and just being like living in the woods. We're going to get into a lot of cool stuff about the things today. We're talking The Last of the Mohicans, directed by Michael Mann, written by Michael Mann and Christopher Crowe, based on the book by James Fenimore Cooper. This is the third adaptation at this point. I believe this is the first time in the second half of the 20th century it was adapted though. Starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Madison Stowe, Russell Means, Eric Schweig, and Wes Studi, our guy Wes Studi, co-starring Jodie May, Stephen Waddington, Maurice Roves, Patrice Chereau, and Pete Postlethwaite. Opened on August 26, 1992. It premiered in France. It went wide in the United States on September 25th, 1992. It did just fine for itself financially. 75.5 million domestic, 67 international, 143 million on at the time, a catastrophic $40 million budget. 40 million for a movie of this size was just like, this is out of control. We'll get into the kind of production issues, but it did make its money back in plenty of ways. Nominated for one Oscar. It won. It won for Best Sound, a very
absolutely
very worthy nomination. Kind of seen as kind of snubbed across the board for a lot of stuff. I don't really get the disconnect.
If they had lost on the sound on this, the music, I mean, I would revolt. I would never watch another movie ever again.
Okay, Jake, now when I say best sound, it's actually sound effects.
Oh, okay. Well,
the music was not nominated.
What?
It's insane. It's one of the most iconic scores in the history of film.
I'm done here.
Well, the podcast has been in 30 episodes, guys. That's as far as we go. So Rotten Tomatoes, 93% for critics, 88% audience. For some reason, I expected them both to be higher, but I found some hidden pockets of people who really don't like this movie. I don't know what they're seeing.
Well,
a lot. And I kind of looked into it whenever I saw these pockets. I'm like, well, what's the problem? It's like, well, it's boring for long stretches. And I was like, if you say so. I was really enthralled with a lot of different stuff, but we'll get into that in just a second. I will go through a quick plot summary of The Last of the Mohicans. So this is set in 1757 in New York. So this is just setting the stage. It's pre-Revolutionary War in the United States. This is happening during the French and Indian War between the French and the English over who controls the northern parts of the United States. Eventually, the British would end up winning, maintain the United States. The French would go into Canada. Anyway, so during this time, the story is the star of the movie is Nathaniel Poe, also known as Hawkeye, played by Daniel Day-Lewis. He is an adopted son of Chingachgook, played by Russell Means, and he has an adopted brother, Uncas, played by Eric Schweig. They are trackers and fur sellers, and they're just kind of living off the land, doing the very Uncas and Chingachgook are the last of the Mohican people. And they go through the land, just living off the land as best they can. They're familiar with the territory. this coincides with the French Indian War. And it happens that Major Duncan Hayward, the British Army major, Duncan, played by Stephen Waddington, Duncan, pretty much the swarmy asshole of the movie, kind of. He arrives in New York to get the daughters of Colonel Monroe, the daughters at Fort William Henry in the Adirondack Mountains. So this is, it's all very rural, and it's in the woods, and it's just kind of like it's hard. It does a good job of acting like the Wild West of pre-colonial America, but not the Wild West you'd think of, just kind of this chaotic time of militia and war and this kind of stuff. So he goes and gets the two sisters, and with a war party accompanied by Magua, who is a Mohawk, and on the way back, they are Magua betrays them because he is actually a Huron, and he is allied with the French. He kills a bunch of people. Essentially, everybody's going to be killed until Hawkeye, Chingachgook, and Uncas come in and save everybody. Magua is able to escape. So Cora, the oldest of the girls, played by Madeline Stowe, kind of falls in love with a very dreamy Daniel Day-Lewis, and as he leads them back to Fort William Henry, to their father. The other daughter, Alice, kind of falls in love with Uncas along the way as well. And they kind of learn about each other, and there's a rivalry between Hawkeye and Duncan. They finally get to the fort as it's under siege, and Hawkeye's like, okay, well, I'm going to help out the militia, and the militia's like, no, we want to leave to go defend our homelands because of attacks, and they're like, no, you can't do that. That's against the law because I said so. And Hawkeye helps him anyway, so he's arrested, and the Monroe is there hoping for reinforcements from General Webb, the English guy, and it eventually doesn't come. There's a parley. The French allows the English to leave, but Magua is there like, well, yeah, we're going to let them leave, but I have a personal vendetta against Monroe and the British in general. So on the way back, even though he is under arrest, as Hawkeye, Chingachgook, and Uncas are on the war party is the path is attacked. A lot of people are killed, including Monroe, as Magua cuts out his heart. Everybody is able to escape down the river, but Magua also chases after them. The three Mohicans are able to escape through a waterfall, but eventually Magua takes them prisoner. A lot of stuff happening with the Indian tribes about the Hurons, and essentially they decide, okay, well, Magua, you can take Alice as your wife. We're going to burn Cora to death, and Duncan can go back with Hawkeye. And Duncan sacrifices himself to let Cora leave. He's being burned alive, and Hawkeye shoots him in the head as just for the mercy kill. Magua runs away.
My compliments, sir.
Yes, I have a little thing. That's a really cool part. Like, it's the coolest death in the movie. You're just like, yes, I'm very happy about that death. It in a lot of different ways. So Magua takes Alice, and Uncas runs after them. Cross-country champions of New York.
Yeah, no shit.
I have a little fun. By the way, this entire thing I'm talking about is the last 15 minutes of the movie. The last 15 minutes are just a masterpiece. So Uncas goes and chases after Alice. He kills some of the Huron, but is eventually killed by Magua. Then Alice decides to kill herself instead of going with Magua. And then Hawkeye and Chingachgook specifically, really upset about it all, for obviously they killed his son. Kills a bunch of people, eventually defeats Magua in single combat. And Chingachgook is the last of the Mohicans, and that's how the movie ends. Just doing that plot description, there's really, like, the action in this movie, there are like 3 big action scenes. And the rest of it is really politically minded, considering it's 1757 America. Like the politics of Indian tribes between each other, the politics of Indian tribes dealing with the French, the politics of the French dealing with settlers, settlers and the English. It's really complex with how things are going across.
Yeah, and I'm gonna history geek a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, at this point, the French and the British are basically struggling against each other to create the biggest empires, basically.
Yeah.
North America being one conquest for both of them. And it's funny, like in Europe, the French and Indian War is known as the 7 Years' War, not the French and Indian War is what it's known as here.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But so the interesting thing was at this point, England and France are battling each other all over the world.
Yes.
And I've seen it as described as the first World War. Like,
oh, okay. Really? Just because it's like these are the two powers and they're at each other.
Yeah, all over the world. So there were so it wasn't even North America. I mean, there was also the Caribbean, the Philippines.
I mean,
there were these wars going on globally just for control of land resources, countries, continents.
You want to talk about colonial powers in the 1700s? It was France and England. That was it. That like Russia didn't care. China was overdoing their own. These were the powers and the colonial powers doing all the stuff. So they were really at each other. And this is kind of an interesting thing about the movie. Like, you don't ever see French Indian wars depicted in film. Like, it's not something you normally see.
Yeah, and I think we addressed on one of our previous episodes about I think we were talking about 1917, but you know, there's not a lot of World War I movies. There's a million World War II movies.
There's a lot of
a million Vietnam movies.
Civil War, Vietnam, and World War II are essentially the ones you're always going to get a lot of stuff about.
Like, how many Korean War movies have you watched?
I can't.
I believe Devotion just came out.
I've seen, you know, maybe a few. I can't even think of the old ones. I can't even think of the old ones. Like,
there's just some wars are just not deemed movie quality. I don't know what.
Like even the Revolutionary War is not exactly, outside of like the Patriot, it's not exactly a very well documented thing. Like, it's just kind of. It's funny how you got that kind of disconnect. Like, there's so much stuff about the Civil War, and
oh my god,
and then there's so much stuff about World War II, and World War I being in the middle just misses. It's kind of just like, they do such a good job of painting it as, okay, this is what this war is, and this is why it's all happening, but it's never like, it didn't feel like a history lesson.
Yeah, well,
I know they play a little fast and loose with the actual details, but
yes, there's a lot. The film is more based on the book than it is in history.
Yeah.
And so the book was a take from history, and then a movie took from the book.
Yeah.
But you know, something I thought about just looking back on this particular conflict was, it seems like the Native Americans, Indians, if I use a term that I'm not trying to offend anyone, but anyways, the natives were basically, the way I think of it is, France and Great Britain were like mom and dad that were going through a vicious divorce. and looking for custody of all this, and they used the Indians, the Native Americans, like children. You know,
and I
their
noticed
children, they use them as weapons. You know,
I noticed that in one point of the movie, like the Indian leaders talking at the fort, they're like, or I think Nathaniel's talking to one of the leaders, and he's like, we made our promises to our Indian brothers, and that's our word. And they, these colonials in their politics, they're not afraid to be like, well, I'll do whatever it takes in order to win my battle. And these native groups are like, no, our word is our bond, and no matter what we say is what we're going to do. And the other people are going to use that to their advantage and deceive, whatever it is, to win. And you can see this in the mechanics of how the British are operating. The British, by the way, very much this is a movie of sowing the seeds of the revolution. You're like, oh, no wonder they did it. Like, it was absolutely like, these guys are pricks. Like,
well, and I always, whenever I see a movie like Revolutionary War or obviously this era, I'm like, okay, y'all created this global empire, but y'all thought you could put on red wool coats, announce every move you're gonna make, like in a nice convenient line, and like just expect to march across a field and defeat everyone. It's
very much the hubris. It's English.
There's a reason there's a United States of America.
It's very much
because they sucked.
It's English hubris, especially right at the beginning. They're talking about the French. It's like the French don't have the appetite for war, and it's like, we're gentlemen. We know how to. It's like, shut up. Like, know the reality of your situation, not like these abstract concepts. Okay, so I really dropped the ball on this, by the way. This is the first in our mini series for the month of February of our version of romance movies.
Love is in the air.
Love is in the air. And that's, you know what, Jake? You just coined the phrase, love is in the air. That's what the month is going to be called. Love is in the air, and we're starting it with this movie. Now, I know we just talked about all the war and the French-Indian War, but generally this movie is a romance. Like, it's not.
Well, yeah.
Everything is kind of devoted for that.
Yeah, it's it is a love story set within a conflict.
Yes. So I mean, you get all that kind of stuff.
But yeah, it's, I mean, look at, you can look at traditional like romance stories and things like this, and like, okay, The Notebook. What is it? It's a love triangle.
Yes.
What was this? It was a love triangle. It just happened to take place during the French and Indian
War. And you
can
kind of do the same thing. Titanic, it's a love story, just happens to happen during it
got interrupted.
Gone with the Wind, Civil War,
Pearl Harbor,
all those type of things. It's exactly like that.
Love triangle.
And it's just
triangle.
But it's kind of much more, for some reason, it just has much more focus on the reality of the situation. Like, love is a thing, but in Pearl Harbor is a bad example of this. It is a great example of the opposite, because it's like, oh, stupid World War II got in the way of this love. And in Last of the Mohicans, they're like, well, we love each other, but this war's kind of on. Like, it's the muted romance being a thing. And this is if anybody ever looks to like, Daniel Day-Lewis is his own brand. He has his own mythos. He's an incredible actor. But if you're going to look to a movie, if you're ever with a woman and she's like, I don't like Daniel Day-Lewis, show them this movie. They'll change their minds, because he is dreamy in this thing. He is. I'm
into him.
He is in such a. We'll go through it. I guess this is a good time as any to do Daniel Day-Lewis. Okay, so Daniel, I want to bring. This is our first Daniel Day-Lewis movie. So I'm having a segment for this episode in every Daniel Day-Lewis episode going forward called Daniel Day-Lewis's Insanity Corner. So what so Daniel Day-Lewis, a very devoted, intense actor, is well known for his devotion to his craft to the point of insanity. And for every movie, he will always take it to a level that nobody is ever expected to take it to. For The Last of the Mohicans, he lived in the woods for a couple months. He lived off the land. He learned how to, do all the stuff that he figured out how to hit. Like, by the way, everything you see in this movie that Hawkeye does, that's Daniel Day-Lewis doing it. Everything he does, he is running through the mountains. He is shooting that gun, all that kind of stuff. He will always take himself to a level that nobody else is willing to go to. He made his own canoe out of wood. Like I said, he let's see here. He trained with He trained with, I believe, a U.S. Army colonel to develop his shooting and hand-to-hand combat skills. He had quit smoking before this movie. This movie caused him to smoke again. My favorite thing said his commitment to the role and strenuous shooting schedule took a toll on his health. He was tested for claustrophobia and mild hallucinations after this film was over. So the point
I don't know, like if I go spend a lot of time out in the woods and stuff, I'll probably come back a ton better.
Well, I think that was probably the aspect of it. You think claustrophobia, he's like out in the woods, out in the wild, and then he gets into any indoor place, and he's like,
gotcha. Okay.
That probably is it's probably the adjustment back.
Gotcha.
But so he is. I want to find a shirt that has his picture on it and it says cross country champion, because man, he is huffing this whole movie. He is going fast. He is doing everything impressive. At no point, this is not a situation of like, this is an actor who is playing this role well. It's like, nope, he could probably kill you with a tomahawk.
Yeah. Well, and then, that scene where all three of them, they're running up this steep rock cliff.
Yes.
Okay. At that point,
it's at least a 40-degree angle. At least.
Yeah. Well, Russell Means at that point, who plays Chingachgook, he is not a young man.
No.
At that point. And I mean, he's huffing and puffing it and kicking ass right behind the young dudes, I mean,
53 years old in this movie.
Yep.
Man.
Well, I'm about to be 39 and I don't want to make that climb.
I mean, and like I said, all three of them to the absolute max of their ability, and they all like, you have that kind of artificial, like, oh, I'm going to touch this moss and that means something. And we're like, shut up. And it's like, nope, I believe it with these three. Like they have a lived in roughness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's difficult to accurately describe like how Native American culture was at that point and how dependent they were on the land and everything. Is that it's the same way as if you walk into your house and go, why is the rug crooked?
Yes. Yeah.
Or who left the light on? Or something like that.
You see your environment that way. Yeah.
They can see the differences and they can recognize the problems just based on their environment. They're so in tune with it.
Yeah.
And it's it's impressive, but at the same time, it's like if that's the way you live, then of course you're going to figure it out.
This is one of the great Native American movies. Like when you think of like Native actors playing Native roles, you're like, okay, these guys are complex. They're fully rounded characters, normal human beings. They're not like, even Magua, one of the most vicious humans ever to be portrayed on screen, has completely his motivations are clear as could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Once he's talking to the French general, he, basically lays it out. He's like, this is why I hate these motherfuckers, and I want to go kill them. I want to go kill them all.
He's like,
and
you're gonna let him
all
go
right.
free? Okay, I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm gonna let the whole time. And he's not.
And the French guy kind of goes,
yeah. And I was thinking this during the scene where he kills Uncas and then Alice kills herself. The whole time I was like, he is not doing this. He's not doing just this for the viciousness of it. He's like, this guy's trying to kill me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kill him. I'm not going to butcher him. I'm going to slit his throat. That's that. And then I throw it. It's not personal.
It's business.
It's business. And then when Alice, he's like, no, I don't. The famous. It's a great the great hand motion of that.
I have the funniest story.
Go ahead.
Related to that. Well, okay. It's not my story.
Okay.
Previous boss I had. He was a cop.
Okay.
And they were down at the coast, big family vacation, and like this big deck that went directly into the ocean. Like the beach was right there. It was high tide.
Yeah.
His like toddler daughter got a hold of his badge and she was on the edge, like
ready to throw it.
Ready to throw it. And he was like, no. And he said that's what it reminded him of, because he was
Magua trying to get Alice back from the ridge. It's like, okay,
just like, please don't,
please, please.
Yeah. She chucked it off into the ocean, though. It didn't work.
And Alice,
just like Alice went sliding down
the thing,
mountain.
Okay, I want to talk about that final battle in a little bit, so we'll move on to some other stuff real quick. But okay, so Magua and Wes Studi in general, he makes this movie. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis is awesome, but Magua is on another level. He's such a So Wes Studi in general.
And I mean,
go ahead.
Sorry, look at another great Native American movie, Dances with Wolves.
Yes.
I mean,
in that one too. Yeah.
God, he's so brilliant in that too. I mean, it's plays, like dadgum.
Geronimo, an American legend, plays Geronimo. Yep. Probably the most acclaimed native actor these days. Won an honorary Oscar a couple years ago for where he also does a ton of humanitarian work. He was in the movie Heat with Michael Mann. I saw it.
Yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of.
Great in Heat, and he's just a cop. Like, he's not like he's just a random dude. Not really necessarily doing anything Native American. He's just he does an investigation. So Wes Studi is incredible in this movie.
He is.
And like I said, not only is Magua's motivations clear, everybody in this movie has very clear motivations for why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like the colonists who want to go back to their homesteads, they want to protect their families. The English, they want to protect the English interests. Hawkeye cares about Cora. Duncan doesn't want to betray Nathaniel out of just spite. He wants to hit him out of the way to get Cora. And like everybody has clear as bell motivations. So it makes everybody that much more well-rounded.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is that's a good point. Like with Duncan, like initially you're like, God, this huge douchebag, I mean, but he ends up showing that he cares more about Cora than he does his own interests. I mean, it's yeah, everyone has a clear motivation. But at the end, like everyone, I mean,
Cards are on the table. Yeah.
You see what people, really are made of,
A little behind the scenes thing for you. You'll really love this one. So in the script for Last of the Mohicans, in that scene where Duncan is burning, the idea was that Chingachgook throws the rifle to Hawkeye. Hawkeye just snaps it to his shoulder and bam, just that. And the director and Daniel Day-Lewis talked about it, and he's like, I think I need to hesitate. I think I need to steady myself. And he does. He has a really pained look on his face. He steadies himself and nails him. And you're just like, yes. Like, I've never been happier for a mercy kill.
You can absolutely see that he wouldn't like, good, the dude
finally
that is going after my chick.
Yep.
Because if that was his motivation, he'd let him burn.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see that he's like, this is the best thing I can do for this dude. He turned out to be, a solid fella. So,
and also the Chingachgook throws him the gun. We're like, you know what you got to do. Like, he knows it. Cora's like, yeah, do this. And the scene before this, this film for our family is a staple. We saw this movie dozens of times when we were kids. It was, we were kind of mildly obsessed with Indian culture growing up. So we had we cared about all that stuff. I can't not tell you how many times, 1,000 maybe, we were playing with acting like we had guns, and we do that. The famous Daniel Day-Lewis over. So that scene where they're talking to the Sasham, and it's my favorite ever, like, hey, translate for me scene, because he says something, Duncan replies.
Yes.
And
I love it.
And then whenever Magua is replying in French, you can hear Duncan very, very quietly responding exactly what he's saying.
Yep.
And then obviously the big line that Magua finishes with.
Yeah.
Like, you are dogs. I spit on you. And it makes me laugh every time, because I always say it's like, all this kind of stuff. But anyway, like, it's just a really cool scene. And as soon as that scene ends, the movie is done. The movie is a missile to the end.
Yes. Yeah. It's nonstop from that point. Yeah.
So I rewatched it and was rewatching it with my wife, and we're watching it and we're like, okay, so Uncas sees Alice go up the mountain. And so he heads off in front of everybody else and gets in front of him. Once Hawkeye shoots Duncan, Hawkeye, Cora, and Chingachgook come up behind. Now, the funny thing about it is Chingachgook and Hawkeye are hightailing it up that mountain, and somehow Cora's behind them.
Well, yeah. They're like, we're keeping up, and they still got like these big dresses on and shit.
There's no way. Like, it's like they are flying up this mountain. They're right behind them. Cora somehow sees Alice die. It's just like that's really the only.
She caught up.
It's really the only part of this movie where I'm like, no. But
man, one thing about Cora, she had great,
stamina,
just cardio and stamina. I mean, hey, she might not be the fastest, but she won't quit.
So I tell you what, the cardio this is a cardiovascular movie, man.
Oh my God.
There are two things I always think about when I watch this movie. One, I'm not sure I want a gun if it's only going to have one shot and be that big of a pain in the ass.
Exactly.
It's
too much fucking work.
It's such a pain in the ass to shoot a gun in this movie.
I would rather just go start hitting people with it than have to reload the motherfucker.
Absolutely. And yes. And that famous scene where the scout is going to send the message to Webb, and they're shooting on top of they're shooting the guys trying to intercept him. They use 7-8 guns because they don't have time to reload them.
Yeah.
And and at the same time, I was thinking, man, that scout has got 30 miles to run. And
yeah,
I mean, that's just
the
idea of living in this place.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, he's literally got to be a marathon runner.
Yeah.
While a lot of people are trying to kill him and not kill him in a nice way.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not going to be like, oh yeah, it's okay. Are you going to catch him?
I mean, they catch him, then yeah, it's going bad.
So in that last scene where, so Uncas is killed, and then as soon as Uncas is killed, Chingachgook and Hawkeye they pick up their speed like 3 notches, and they're killing everybody left and right. And this is how I knew Daniel Day-Lewis actually practiced this. He's running. He shoots somebody. He's reloading his gun. He at the powder, and he's doing it as he's running full tilt. And I'm like, I have no doubt in my mind that Daniel Day-Lewis did every single one of this, and that gun could have shot. And
it's funny. I watched an interview with him where he had a real problem with that part.
Really?
And
the powder, and
he was like, that's not realistic. And you know, shooting on the run and everything like that. And they like brought in people that could do it.
Yeah.
And then he trained underneath them to do it. But I think it might have been Mythbusters or something like that, where they were talking about like the you know, he's like climbing up the cliff towards the end, and he's got 2 muskets and drops 2 guys. They were like, nah, so probably not.
And that was another question my wife asked. It's like, well, you know, when you shoot a shotgun, you have to brace yourself, and there's a kick. And I'm like, is that a musket thing? Is like, well, I don't know if there's like the fact that there was nowhere, whenever the gunpowder explodes, it goes out. So I don't know if there was musket kicks, but I don't think you could do that.
No, I think they would jump out.
Okay.
Firing 2 from the hip. Yeah.
Okay.
I think even if, that's not realistic.
Okay.
But
so have you ever fired a musket?
It's cool though.
Have you ever had the chance to fire a musket?
I've fired a black powder rifle.
Okay.
But it wasn't a musket. So this was a percussion cap.
The more modern day version of what a musket would be.
It's a modern day black powder rifle.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So single shot. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, it sucks kind of. I mean,
is that the one you said sound? It's like an atomic blast sound. It's an incredibly loud sound.
Yeah, it does something weird. I mean, it's not like most weapons, you know, is pull pop. It's like zoop.
It's a different,
it launches
interesting
or something. I don't know. I didn't like it, honestly. And it's too much goddamn work. And then you shoot it, and then you got to do all the goddamn work to shoot it again.
I mean,
like,
every Civil War movie, Revolutionary War movie, I'm like, man, it is not worth it having a gun. It just really isn't. I mean, you see World War II movies with 6-round rifles, and you're just like, not enough. And it's like, you can't imagine what it's like. Oh, let me stand in a line, shoot this guy. Okay, let me reload. Let me make myself as wide as possible while I reload my musket here. It's like,
Well, do you wonder why, you know, most battles at that time ended up with just people running at each other and doing whatever they could to kill each other?
It's like, by all means, there's a reason.
That's why they had swords.
Bayonets are a reason. Yeah, there's a reason bayonets were the thing. So a little bit behind the scenes for this movie. So this movie went way over budget. It was a problem for a lot of people, especially the studio. It was very expensive. It kept being more expensive. Michael Mann, the director, each scene took at least 20 takes. Concerned about the growing costs, the studio sent a person to be right behind the director. And after a while, he would just go, "That's enough, Michael. Let's move on. We don't need another take of that." My favorite line, my favorite story from this. Those sieges and all that kind of stuff, it was filmed in the dead of night. Kept going over and over again. Director had these big loudspeakers, and then there's a big bright orange light, and the director's like, "Get rid of that light. Where's that light coming from?" And they said, "That's the sun. Please, like, we can. It's like, it's daytime now." It's like, oh, okay. So this was a terrible experience for pretty much everybody on the set.
I bet it was pretty brutal. I bet. I mean, it's in rough territory and everything. I mean, I bet it was,
So New York is depicted. It's filmed in North Carolina because obviously it's probably more realistic to what 1757 New York is like, but current day New York is much more civilized. It's there's roads, and in the middle of North Carolina, there's a reason it looks like that, because nobody's going to live there.
I don't know. Sounds okay to me. But yeah, no, but I mean, so this is really set in like upstate New York, and there's still very rural areas up there.
Yeah.
I knew someone that was a cowgirl, could bust a bronc better than any dude, and she was from upstate New York. She grew up on a ranch in upstate New York.
Nice.
Legit cowgirl. So yeah, there's still a lot of area up there, and probably because it gets too damn cold.
Right. And then you're in the middle of nowhere. So if you're not going to say it's Wes Studi, if you're not going to say it's Daniel Day-Lewis, if you're not going to say it's Michael Mann, the star of this movie is Alistair Fraser. Alistair Fraser is a renowned Scottish fiddle player, and he is the man who he is the one who is the fiddler on the soundtrack. He's uncredited, but that entire theme and the theme of this movie, it propels all the action in the best possible way.
Dude, I can't say enough about this music score.
Absolutely.
You take it out or you put something lesser in it. It just doesn't work. Literally, I've had like tough mornings where I'm like struggling to get going and got to hit the road, and I can put this soundtrack on and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going now. You know what I mean? Like, it's so like, there's no way that the scene where they're running up that cliff works without that music right there. I mean,
absolutely.
It's just,
and it's not just the fiddle, it's the and it's one of the more famous pieces of music you hear in 1,000 other movies. And the man doing the music, it looks like his name is Trevor Jones, who's a composer.
Yes.
Did some various stuff. Famously did the music for Labyrinth with David Bowie, The Last of the Mohicans, obviously. A bunch of other stuff. He still does stuff these days, I think. He is 73 years old, a South African guy. Just an incredible job from him. Across the board. Just I think it had a lot to. I think one of the reasons this movie didn't get an Oscar nomination for the score is because they brought in another guy at the last minute to do some extra stuff. And I think there was probably some category confusion and maybe some category rules that they might have violated.
Gotcha.
So
technicality.
Yeah. But I mean,
I hope there was some reason.
The score on this thing is just out of control. It's never going to not, rile you up. It's always going to be like, man, I'm stirred. I'm ready to go. I should put it on when I run.
Yeah.
Like, because
you really should. I'm
really
telling you.
I didn't think about it till just now. It's like, man, I need to start running with that song. Man, I'm gonna.
Yeah, and you'll be like, I have to go save my wife, and
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. Let's take
motivate you.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. All right, we are back. Before we keep going, I want to talk about some of the other supporting performances. Obviously, we talked about Duncan a little bit. Stephen Waddington doing a really good job on there. Jodie May, who plays Alice, said most of what she filmed actually was cut out of the movie. There's supposed to be a 3-hour version of this somewhere, and she had a lot more to do. She never really did. I really like, even though Madeline Stowe doesn't really have a whole lot to do in this movie. I really like what she does with Cora. She seems like a very, she seems very practical, like picking the gun up, putting in her dress, all that kind of stuff. Good match for Daniel Day-Lewis. She does a good job of acting like she wants to have sex with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. No, yeah, yeah. She's yeah, she does a great job.
Yeah.
And ooh, like I think Alice almost does a better job
of being
as
in
like
shock.
a meek, yeah, like yeah, in shock, traumatized,
Mhm.
and then ultimately at the end, she's
Little,
like,
I'm
I've got
empowerment.
my decision to
Yep.
make,
Yep. This is I'm
and
not going to be
you're
deciding.
not gonna make this decision.
It's
Yep.
obviously it's tragic, but at the same time, she does take control of it. It is an empowering way to take control of her own fate. I really like that part too. Um, Eric Schweig is Uncas, physically doing all the same awesome stuff that Daniel Day-Lewis does. He looks, I think he's probably a kid in this movie. I would imagine he cannot be more than 25. Let's see. He was born in 60s. He was 25. So he was 25 when this movie came out.
Yeah.
That seems about right. And then my favorite supporting performance out of the ones we were talked about is Russell Means as Chingachgook, especially that last
Oh man.
that speech about go straight as an arrow, go wait, be patient, all that,
Yeah.
that great little, like, I forgot after he kills Magua, I'm like, oh yeah, the movie's not over. I'm like, yes, we get this a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, he's really great in this. And I will say this is like one of the best killing the bad guy scenes.
yes.
Like, like in Die Hard when Hans Gruber's falling off and stuff like that. Like, you always like to see the villain go down. This is one of the best.
It's
I
catharsis.
Mean,
So you got I can't help it because I've heard somebody else say it. So every time he does that little somersault, I have to say tumble sauce. So he's like coming in tumble sauce, and then he does that little somersault, comes up, breaks his elbow. Just it makes you squirm.
Yeah!
It's just every time makes him squirm, hits him in the side, dislocates his shoulder, and then you're just like, okay. I mean,
he doesn't do it quickly.
It's
he toys with them.
Well, more than anything else, like, I was more impressed with, like, Magua, you're just sitting there with a broken arm, no big deal. Like, you have a compound fracture, dude. Compound fracture, hit in the side, shoulder, and he's like, okay, and then spin around, and man, it is a sweet, sweet death.
I love that final here.
Wow. Okay.
Watch this.
Okay.
I'm on a swivel chair.
I like your form. Okay.
So, okay, hang on.
For the sake of audio, I will try to describe this for everybody. So big, yep. Yes. And make sure to use your foot to dislodge it from his innards.
And then kick him off a cliff.
Kick him off the cliff as a final goodbye. It's great. Yeah, great finish to that one. Russell Means really awesome in this movie. Another one who does a lot of much more known for his activism than he is as an actor. This is the big thing he was known for. I was going to
ask you about that later.
Yeah. He was doing other stuff, but Wes Studi and Russell Means are big activists for the Native community. All right. It is now time for my favorite part of the podcast every week. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker, put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. It is time for Pull for a Dumbass. What I'm going to do this week, instead of going about a filmography of a filmmaker, I'm going to discuss the top box office films of the year 1992. The reason is because The Last of the Mohicans, making this is domestic box office, by the way, made 75 million domestic. It was good for 16th for the year. I'm going to talk about the 15 ahead of it. So this is 1992. This is the, our age wise, I was only 6 at the time. You were 8, but this is the time all these movies were on TV constantly. Like, you're going to have a great number here. It's not going to surprise me. But there was a lot of interesting movies coming out in 1992. Finishing 15th that year, a classic of our mom and our aunts, Fried Green Tomatoes.
Yeah, of course. Good movie.
Everybody's favorite cannibal movie. it's like heartwarming. Totally not lesbians, not like in the book. Totally not lesbians. They're just friends, right, guys? But yeah, fried green tomatoes, Kathy Bates being awesome. At 14, I was actually surprised that this was 14th. I didn't expect it to make as much money as it did, but I was pleasantly surprised. Woody Harrelson as the titular white man who can't jump.
Yep. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's the long cinematic history of Wesley Snipes acting like he's an athlete, though he is not.
I remember you telling me that before.
Yeah, you watch this, you watch White Man Can't Jump, and you're like, oh man, Woody Harrelson kind of knows what he's doing basketball wise, and then everything Wesley Snipes does is in slow motion, and so you're like, oh, that's not a coincidence, but still, he still does a good job.
No, I remember that era when it came out, and that was a big deal, and it would be like shooting hoops on the playground or something.
Oh yeah.
And the people of color would, White Man Can't Jump. And you know what? In my case, they were correct.
Yeah, I was like, I played basketball, and I still was like, by no means was I the guy who was like towering over anybody else. All right. So the long history of, speaking of the more famous Native American movies, the director of said Dances with Wolves earlier, Kevin Costner, starring in maybe the first R-rated movie we ever saw, The Bodyguard.
Yep. Yeah.
A great example of Whitney Houston being unable to act. She is really bad in that movie. I don't think Kevin Costner is exactly excited about being in that movie either.
No.
But
no, I think kind of like his like apathy that he has to display like as a bodyguard in that movie, like it is probably like he's like, I don't care. I don't know. I mean, it's not good.
It made a ton of money. The soundtrack made a ton of money. Everybody forgets that Dolly Parton wrote that song. Whatever.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, she did a much better job at it too.
It's very much the everybody thinking Tina Turner did Proud Mary, even though it's Creedence Clearwater Revival, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, at 11, the weirdest movie of this list. A film I have seen, I respect, but don't necessarily love. Keanu Reeves, starring as a British man in Dracula.
That's a no.
You haven't seen it. It does a lot of
and I'm not. I think I'm not going to.
It does a lot of
Keanu Reeves as a British.
He's not. So Gary Oldman is Dracula. Gary Oldman is incredible in this movie. Anthony Hopkins is Van Helsing. You had a lot of different random people in it. Winona Ryder at her peak. It is an interesting disaster in my mind, even though it was very financially successful, got Oscar nominations, stuff like that. But it's a bit of a mess. I know a lot of people. I don't know that one. I know a lot of people who really like it, but don't count me among them. Okay, so speaking of, everybody always talks about, it's like, man, all these movies these days, they're all just they're all sequels and all this kind of stuff. And everybody goes, well, man, I wish back in the old days. Well, the 90s were just as bad, but the movies are pretty good. How about the Jack Ryan movie, Patriot Games?
Yes.
Yep. One of the Harrison Ford ones. I can never really remember which one is Patriot Games or Clear Present Danger. One has Willem Dafoe. One has Gene Hackman, maybe. I don't remember. Like, I can never tell the difference between the two. Anyway, so Patriot Games making plenty of money.
Is that a Tom Clancy?
It is one of the Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy ones.
Yeah. So I think that's where I saw it, is because our granddad would read the books and watch the movies. Yeah. Yep.
So maybe the only chance for you to ever get a Steven Seagal movie. How about Under Siege?
Yes.
So I was talking to a friend of mine about Under Siege because we were talking about Titanic. And we were saying in Titanic, for a lot of people, it's the first boobs they ever saw. Just because it was a very mainstream movie, there was boobs. And I had mentioned this to a friend of mine, and they said, "No, Under Siege, man." It's like I saw Under Siege when I was a kid, and Erica Elenick pops out of a cake, and she is and she's naked, she's topless, and that is actually a plot point in the movie. It's as good as a Steven Seagal movie is going to get, but it's still a Steven Seagal movie.
Good Lord.
Okay.
That guy.
God. Number 9. We talked about this actually previously. We talked about this on the LA Confidential episode. The long history of the From Hell series. This is The Nanny from Hell, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Yes.
I can't believe it made this much money. It made $88 million, debuted in January. It's not at all what I expected. Okay, the most unexpected part of this is what's at number 8. So it made $99 million. That wasn't the surprising thing. The surprising thing was it was only at number 8. It's Aladdin.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you've
the
seen
cartoon one.
Yes, you've seen Aladdin, and I was like, "There's no way Aladdin only made $99 million." I'm like, okay. So I looked at it.
No way.
It debuted in November. It was number 1 for almost the entirety of the rest of the year, and stayed in the top 10 of the box office until March. It made $220 million domestically, but in the year 1992, it only made 99. So Aladdin, one of the whenever everybody says it's like, man, cartoons are better than they are, and it's like, no, we always say Lion King, Aladdin. It's hard to top. Those are the two. Those are the two from our childhood, and Toy Story right behind it too, obviously.
Robin Hood's in there.
Yeah,
for me at least.
Well, I mean that was more VHS.
That's old school though.
Yeah. Robin Hood, Jungle Book, those type of movies. We've done plenty of Tom Hanks movies. This is his most underrated performance in the beginning of the famous Tom Hanks run. At number 7 at $107 million, A League of Their Own.
Of course.
The beginning of the Tom Hanks urinating universe. So we talk about first boobs and nudity in movies. It really peaked in an R-rated movie with some really vivid sex and the most famous shot of a vagina in the history of film. Sharon Stone's Basic Instinct. Yep. A classic. She does it in front of Newman from by the way, from Seinfeld. Really interesting movie. Do you remember it outside of the nudity and the sex?
No, that was pretty much it. I think that's the only one. I think that's the only reason I put it on. I didn't watch it until I was in college.
Oh yeah, same thing. I didn't I had watched it. I think I watched it again.
But I heard Sharon Stone's junk, and I went, well, we're renting that.
Give it a shot. I watched it a couple years ago, and it's a really bizarre, odd movie. But I mean, it's and nowadays the sex seems pretty blasé, but just 1992.
It's like,
the first ever successful Saturday Night Live movie, making $120 million. Number 5, Wayne's World.
Yeah,
I have not seen it in a really long time.
I did, but I mean, I was never into Wayne's World too much. I think I was like with a friend or something.
I've definitely seen it, but I don't have the love for it that some people do. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was number 5. At number 4, $136 million. Another sequel, but the only sequel that features a U.S. president before he was the U.S. president. That's right. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Yes.
The perfect example. Yes. Yes. In the movie, Donald Trump is in the movie. Macaulay Culkin asks where the reception is, and he says this way or whatever. So
that's not true, though. What you said.
He was wrong.
No, you said the first president to be in a movie before he was president. Ronald Reagan was an actor.
Well, I meant just for the sake of this podcast,
Modern
I
era.
guess, a modern area. I mean, I don't think of Ronald Reagan. I forget that he actually made movies. So Home Alone 2 is the great example of like, hey, Home Alone worked. Let's do the exact same thing across the board.
Yeah.
It's not very good, but it certainly made money.
Yeah.
Okay, so at number 3, a movie I rewatched a couple months ago, and it is awesome. And it's one of those movies you can write down on a piece of paper and pitch it to a studio. It's an elevator pitch movie. You're like, okay, this is my idea. My idea, Whoopi Goldberg is a singing nun. Sister Act.
Yeah.
I love Sister Act. It's great.
I liked it as a kid, but I look back on it and I doubt I'd like it now.
I thought the same thing too, and I rewatched it and I'm like, man, Whoopi Goldberg is a movie star at the time. Like she is she is great, and she is charisma propelled. Okay, so 2 sequels are number 2 and number 1. At number 2, $144 million. The third in the long line of Lethal Weapon movies, Lethal Weapon 3.
I'm sure I did.
I'm sure you have too. And do you? So you have to remember what the Lethal Weapon movies are. It's like, okay, the first one is the first one. It's where they're together, and that's Gary Busey. The second one is with the South African apartheid guys. The third one is with a guy. It's the dumbest plot. They sharpen bullets. To a point, and it gets through. It gets through Kevlar. And that's the one with Rene Russo, and the fourth one with the triads. So the third Lethal Weapon.
Okay.
Shocked it made this much money, but $144 million. Okay. Number 1 for the 1992 box office, a movie I had a poster of in my room, over my bed for the majority of our childhood. The weirdest sadomasochistic blockbuster made for kids in the history of film, Batman Returns. That's the Catwoman.
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
Catwoman and Penguin.
Oh, okay.
Danny DeVito is Penguin, and Michelle Pfeiffer is Catwoman. It is.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen it recently. It's a Christmas movie set essentially, but it is.
Yeah.
It is not for kids. It is not a kids movie. It is. There's some really bizarre, off the wall stuff in that movie. It's really cool, but
I think we watched this like in a camp out in the backyard.
Really? That might be the case. Interesting.
In a tent, like a backyard. I'm like extension cord running out.
Really? This is mid 90s. So
I'm almost positive, because I remember Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
So I used to have this poster on my wall. It was it's very black. Michael Keaton's face up top, Michelle Pfeiffer in the middle. Excuse me, Danny DeVito at the bottom. Batman Returns. I had that for years.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's some more, but Jake, I'm unsurprised. 92, like I said, all these movies are right on the list. You got to get with your Keanu Reeves trivia. Dracula's the only one you missed. Fried Green Tomatoes, White Man Can't Jump, The Bodyguard, Patriot Games, Under Siege, Can't Rock the Cradle, Aladdin, League of Their Own, Basic Instinct, Wayne's World, Home Alone 2, Sister Act, Lethal Weapon 3, and Batman Returns. 14 out of 15.
It must have been a good year.
Well done, sir. All right, buddy. Think it is about that time.
Is it?
It is. I am stuck in the Adirondacks.
Well, no, worse than that. You're in the hot box.
Each episode, instead of me starting the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's just trivia. Sometimes it is not. What you got for me today, buddy?
All right. So, as far as obviously Daniel Day-Lewis is maybe the most famous or maybe infamous method actors.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your opinion on actors that are known to be method actors? Like, do you think they're better, worse? Do you think it depends on the actor?
I think there's a level of I think there's a good balance to find. So Daniel Day-Lewis's results speak for himself. Like,
sure,
he digs in and he has these incredible performances. The difference between Daniel Day-Lewis and like somebody else, so the Elvis movie that just came out, that Austin Butler is the guy. He's a very method actor, and he dug deep into it and all this kind of stuff. He can't get rid of the Elvis accent. He just sounds like Elvis now. And he was talking about like Elvis embodied me, and I'm like, shut up. Like stop.
Okay.
Like there's a level. Like I understand getting deep into it. I understand that. But from what I understand, as soon as Daniel Day-Lewis is done with these movies, he's just Daniel Day-Lewis again. Like he's just a dude.
You
like,
would hope.
He gets deep into it and then he backs off. I understand the ability of like, okay, I got to dig deep into this character, understand it. But at the same time, you're doing a job. And
yeah,
your job is not your life. And you're like, oh, I was possessed by him. I'm like, shut up. Like there's a level. Do your research, do all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think a part of it is just like, oh, well, I wanted to be a protester, so I got tear gassed. I'm like, shut up. Like, that doesn't matter. Like,
right.
Like, you're just doing it to say it sounds good when you're doing a press tour and all that kind of stuff.
It's virtue signaling.
Yeah, and if
I think
if it helps
to an extent,
if it works for you, it works for you. It's much more of a like, are you doing it to get you better with the character, or are you doing it because you're a prick?
Yeah. Either way, you're making more money than I am. So
exactly.
I mean, to each his own.
And what if you do all that?
It's like
you do all that work and it's a bad movie. Like, it's like, oh man, I dug deep. I had nightmares. I almost killed myself because I got too much into this movie, and it makes $2 million. I'm like, well, what's the point? Like,
because like I heard a thing about like Shia LaBeouf for Fury decided the guy needed to miss a tooth. He pulled a tooth out.
Yeah. It's just like, well, nobody needs to like that. He just decided that. Like, and there are levels, and Shia LaBeouf being a good example of being like, oh, I'm a method actor. And I'm like, no, you're an asshole. Like, there's a difference.
You're insane.
Yeah.
Well, and then it was like, of course, this infamous shit show of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's testifying and he sounds like Captain Jack Sparrow all the time. I'm like, motherfucker, you're from Kentucky. You don't sound like that.
Well, it was like, shut up, you pretty boy. Like, so yeah, exactly.
No shit. Like, if he actually talked the way like he got brought up, he'd be like, that crazy ass bitch shit in my bed.
Now,
there was
it's
weirdo.
It's now there are levels like the Tom Holland, the kid who plays Spider-Man. He said whenever he does interviews, or like he said he did a commercial, he'll always go into an American accent, but he doesn't think about it. He's just like he it's just like, no, you're from like rural England. Why are you in an American accent? It's like, well, it's just everybody assumes I'm American, and so but yeah, that they're levels. Like,
yeah. All right. Let's see. So we brought up Russell Means.
Yes.
And you also mentioned Wes Studi, their activism, things like that. How familiar are you with Russell Means in terms of?
I'm not. So I know his big thing. Actor is not the first thing he's known for.
No.
Okay.
No.
So outside of this is the big thing I know for, like this, and he does some other actorly stuff. That's what I know him as. I don't really know anything outside of that.
Yeah. Well, he was a big part of it was called AIM, American Indian Movement, and protests that a lot of times ended poorly and stuff. But And he was jailed several times. And um, so if you look back at the American Indian movement, they actually like seized Alcatraz.
Really?
For a while. Yeah, because it was federal property and there was something in like a treaty or something that said they could seize it. So, I mean, there was a standoff, and
is this one of those type of things?
Really interesting.
It's one of those type of things where like Samuel L. Jackson was like the FBI wanted to kill him for a little while in the 70s. And then, by the way, he's going to be an actor. Like, so he was like, this is not like a half thing. This was his thing.
Yeah. Russell Means was shot 2 or 3 times in different assassination attempts.
Jeez.
Actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What an interesting guy.
Yeah, you ought to look into him. It's worth the read. I'll bet. It's pretty interesting. Okay. So obviously the movie, there is the last of the Mohicans, right? Mm-hmm. There's only one guy left.
Yes.
All right. Were the Mohicans a tribe?
Okay.
An actual tribe?
Okay.
Or was this invented by James Fenimore Cooper? And B, if there are they all gone? Is it an extinct tribe?
Okay, so I'm guessing that the Mohican people were real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
As far as the extinction, I doubt it, but I bet you the numbers are low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You are correct on both.
Okay, good.
So there is a Mohican reservation in, where was it? Oh, Wisconsin.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So obviously they're relocated, but there is a Mohican reservation there, but there's only about 1,500 of them.
Oh, wow. And I'm sure, that's really another thing this movie really gets into. Obviously, it's the decimation of the Indian population just based off of anything. It's like, the propaganda of it, the disease, obviously. And the Sasham says, like, ever since I was a boy, one of the white men came and darkness came with them. It's like, that's, and that's always something that, at one point they ruled everything, and now here we are today.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Historians of Native American culture. There's a lot you could get into.
Absolutely.
Like, you could do
state by state.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all completely different. That's the thing is I think a lot of people think of, American Indians. No, it's the
same thing as saying
thousands
Americans.
of communities across, things don't work where I live the same way they work where you live,
Exactly. Yeah. And I agree. There's so much in there, and thank goodness there's so much literature about it. And you've read most of it.
Yeah. Well, on that, this is
The Last of the Mohicans from James Fenimore Cooper. There you go. Nice.
This is actually a 1951 copy.
Fancy. No, look at that. Is that him?
Yep.
Oh, gorgeous. Is it one of those things you want to read it? You want to read it like the book itself, not him. You want to read it very delicately, like you think.
Yes.
You think you do.
I'm very careful with it. Yeah.
I would imagine.
You can see there. This is a 51 copy.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool little thing to have.
Yeah. I love it. I love old books.
And by the way, as you know, if you read it, his name's not Nathaniel in the book.
Right.
It's Natty Bumpo. And the reason they changed it is because they say, "Oh, Natty Bumpo," and people would laugh. they're like, yep, can't have that.
Sure.
So
yeah. And that guy actually, who it was based on, so he really did kind of go like, the English ain't my war.
Yeah.
The French ain't my war. And I believe he was married into the Algonquins, I think. But actually his resistance to join the militia, I think they actually tarred and feathered him.
Really?
Like, yeah, he wasn't he wasn't popular.
And I had read, and Cooper had taken some stuff as well. He borrowed from Daniel Boone, and obviously like Chingachgook or Monroe was a real person.
But he changed his first name. It was like George Monroe, and I think he changed it Edmund.
And then the French general Webb was real, stuff like that. So I mean,
no, that was a British general Webb.
No, I'm saying they were real people.
Oh yeah. The French general.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Okay. So, man, you're in good shape.
Okay.
You keep yourself in good shape. Mm-hmm. You're a CrossFitter.
I try. Yes, sir.
We, I used to be a cross country runner, and I recall I had a cross country meet in Greece at one point.
Yes.
That was extraordinarily steep, and I was not used to that terrain, and it absolutely smoked me. So can you think of a particularly horrific time doing bleachers, stairs, inclines, something like that?
There's two things that immediately come to mind. Is I played basketball in high school, and just the idea of suicides. They're not. This was obviously it's an outdated term these days. They don't use that for the sake of mental health, obviously. But the baseline, free throw line, baseline, half court, baseline, free throw line, baseline. Just the hell of that, running stairs and stuff like that. But at my office has a 5K track around the area. So in other words, the campus where I work is big enough that they traced out places in the road where you can actually run a 5K. And they have competitive 5Ks. They're like, 150 of the employees or whatever will go and do 5Ks. Well, it's pretty straightforward at one point. Well, there's this one part of the backside that's a pretty steep uphill, and I had practice on it, and it's up there and everything. And so I had tried to get used to that. We do a competitive 5K, and all these people are flying past me, and then we get to that uphill, and all of a sudden all those people are just dropping like flies, because any sort of incline just happens to kill people.
So it gets them quads, man.
It gets them quads. And then where our mom lives is at the bottom of a hill on a street. And I have attempted multiple times to try to ride a bike up that hill. I don't think I've done it once.
That's a tough one.
Because you're just like, you have to, and you're just trying to get
end up just walking it up.
It hurts too bad. Yeah. So those are the ones I always think of. But yeah, so were you going like Parthenon steps? Like obviously not the Parthenon, but Pantheon, but I mean equivalent of just angles in Greece.
So there were two races there. One, we actually ran through the original Olympic Stadium.
Awesome.
The first Olympic Stadium.
Which that was cool.
But it really was. But that was all flat. And then the next day we had another one, and we had to go through a grape vineyard and then up and down hills. And I was good if it was flat, but terrain kicked my butt, man.
I get it.
All right. I'm going to maybe get a little controversial here.
Okay. I like it.
Okay. We've talked about, Native American issues and, the history. And you're a sports guy.
I am.
So what is your opinion on Native American names and pro team sports?
I'm always of the belief that I have somebody talked about this when they were talking about statues, like statues of Confederate statues. And somebody was saying, we got to take it down. And it was like, no, I got to defend it. And the guy was saying, it's like, who cares enough about a statue to care? Like, it's a statue. Like like, who has ever been like, I have to defend the right of us? Like, you can say principle all you want, but it was the basic idea of like, I can't believe you care that much. It's kind of the same way. It's kind of the same way, like Indians, Braves, Redskins. I'm just like, well, I don't care. Like now they've never been, the thing is they've never been my teams. Like I have never had a vested interest in like, well, I have the jersey that says this and I grew up with this and it means this and this and this. I don't care. You want to change the names? Change the names. If one person complains and a committee gets together and decides that's the right thing to do, sure. It doesn't bug me in the least bit. It's if tomorrow they said, hey, the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna change the name to the Kansas City whatever, I'm like, awesome. Oh, the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna say the Chiefs, awesome. It's a very non-issue for me personally, but I understand people getting upset about it, but I just don't land on the side.
And a lot of stuff on that subject that I've heard, it's like they ask Native American tribes and stuff. They're like, we think it's cool. Or they're like, it ain't a big deal or something. Yeah, it's a bunch of old white ladies getting pissed off about it or something.
Yeah, it's kind of virtual signaling, like you said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And if
that's my thing.
The name Redskins is tough.
Redskins is easy to. Yeah, you're like, okay, let's.
That's
not. And they change and so it's you got the two sides. You're like, okay, where's the line? You're like, well, probably Indians. So they got rid of Indians. They got rid of Redskins, but Braves and Chiefs, I don't necessarily see as negatives. Seminoles probably going to stay.
No. Well, yeah, and you don't name yourself the Lions because the Lions are stupid.
Yes.
Like actual lions are bad and we don't. No, you name things after, your location and admiration and, so I don't know.
I get the Indians, Redskins changing that. I get it. I understand the side. Now the people who are like, no, we have to keep the Redskins. I'm just like, do we? Like, people change.
Is that names. A hill to die on?
That's a weird one to, it's like people change their names. Like the Titans used to be the Oilers. It's not that big of a deal. Like,
right.
It's just a name. So
yeah. All right. Okay. Have you ever, so in this movie, scalping is seen quite a bit.
Yes.
So really brutal, not unique to Native American culture at all. Actually, some people argue that it was actually imported.
Really?
Because there were bounties placed for how many Native American scalps you could bring in, so you don't have to haul back all the bodies.
Okay.
But there's mixed opinions and everything like that. But on the subject, you have a very nice head of hair.
Thank you.
And our younger brother has a very nice head of hair.
Yes.
But so have you never been scalped?
Is this no? I've got a nice little coif. I get it. I've never been scalped. You do have the natural advantage of if I'm on the ground and somebody grabs me, my head's gonna go with it. You have that natural advantage.
They got the beard though. They could beard scalp.
beard scalp you. There you go. Yeah, just like this is a guy's chin.
Yeah. I have been scalped.
Yes, apparently.
But it was by Mother Nature.
But you have the advantage of having a nice shaped head. I'm convinced myself the reason I'm not bald is I have a nice head of hair because I would look ridiculous bald. Like it suits you pretty well. Like, and to the point where I barely remember you with hair. It's been so long.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So
yeah, I got scalped by God.
God's been nice to me so far. I can't complain.
There you go. Well, he giveth and he taketh away. All right, that's all I got, bud. You're out of the box.
All right, before we go, Jake, what is your film rating of The Last of the Mohicans?
Normally I'm very hesitant to really place it on a list or I'm like usually I like it or I don't like it, love it, hate it, whatever. But
all-timer
bold statement here. Cool hand Luke, numero uno.
Oh yeah?
Last Mohicans.
Ooh.
Number 2.
That's a good one. I like it. I like the confidence to be like, yes, because somebody asked me.
Definitely.
Somebody asked me like, what's your favorite movie? And I said, I gave him a list of 8. I'm like, one of these 8. It's like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Especially being a film critic, they're like, well, what's your favorite movie? I'm like, that's an impossible question. It really,
it's like, well, is it a Tuesday or wait? What's the weather like?
Yeah, it's like, well, let's see. I've seen 60 new movies this month. Like, what like, and yeah. So I appreciate your candor and being like, yeah, this is number 2, and I get it. I really do. Mm-hmm. I am by no means discounting this movie. I got 4.5 out of 5. There are some parts. All right. There are some parts that are a little slower, drag a little more than they probably should. Whenever I started it, I'm like, wow, this is only a 2-hour movie. This feels like it's for our whole life. It's felt like it should be a 3-hour epic, and it's just not.
Yeah. Not really.
Really, and very efficient, exceptional action. This movie makes me realize it's like, man, this is the best case scenario of Daniel Day-Lewis being an action star, and it would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, this is as close as you're going to get. So you always have this to look back on. Also, it gives the ladies love a long-haired, probably smells terrible Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, I can't imagine.
It was actually one of the things I thought of whenever he jumped out of the waterfall. I'm like, yeah, the guy needs a good bath.
Yeah, thank God.
Great movie. I love it. I was shocked at the amount of my peers who don't like it, but I love it, and this will be
that's crazy.
Yeah, but a staple. I don't blame you. I'm glad you love it, and it's a great movie to love.
Well, I'm glad that so far of the films that we've covered so far, I've been able to make a number 1 and a number 2 all over our episodes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had 31. So
I've had my number 1 and my number 2 all over them. Did you pick it up? Okay. All right.
That's a good way to
wait till we get to number 3.
This episode of the Film Critic and the Common Man. Thank you so much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at NebisBen and Letterboxd and Neb810 on Instagram at Bill Miller Movies. Check out my website, Ice Cream for Freaks. You can follow my other writing in the film experience at Cinema Scholars. I'm going over the short subject nominees for the Oscars. I just reviewed the best documentary shorts, and I'm going to do best animated shorts and best live action shorts next week. There are eclectic.
What? Keep going.
Let's go for a run, Jake. Where can you can also find me on other pods? I'm the David Thulison podcast, and Jake, where can the people find you?
Man, I'm charging a fucking mountainside, man.
Man, let's get you fired up. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter, Critic, Comment Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. We will catch you guys next time. This is the end. So we're going to keep going with our February miniseries. Next week, we got one of my picks. It's actually a little bit of romantic. This is probably the most romantic of the movies we're watching. We're watching Out of Sight. One of my favorites as well. So get excited for that one. Thank you all so much. We'll catch you next time.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?